Hi there, Crafty Peeps. Enis here from Papercrafting with Enis, and today we are going to work on creating tabs and dividers for my die storage. So I have completed dividing up, categorizing, and storing my dies, and what I did was I just took temporarily just some little slips of paper like this, and I wrote the categories on the top, and these are separating in the bins each different category. But that doesn't look all that nice. So we're going to create some of these tabs. I'm going to show you how easy it is. It doesn't take long, although I'm going to be making multiples, and I mean multiples, of these little tabs here. We're going to go through creating one today together, and I hope you will stick through all the way to the end so that you can check it out, and maybe it'll give you some inspiration to do something for your own die storage, or maybe even just organization for some other purpose that these dividers would be good for. So anyway, the first thing we need to do is determine how big we need the dividers to be. Now, this is a divider that I created for the cards that I received from my anniversary and birthday challenge. So I already did some basic measurements in order to create this one, but I kind of feel like I'm going to amend the measurements on this for my die storage, and I'll show you why in just a minute. So first of all, what I'm going to do is bring in one of my bins with dies, and I hope you guys are going to be able to see this okay. We're doing an overhead shot here. So I have a section here. This is food and drink. This one back here is Disney inspired, and then I have one here that is birthday inspired. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to create these tabs that are going to have the labels like these little papers do to fit inside of the bins. Okay, so that way they will look all nice and everything. Now, this particular one that I did for my cards, let me just measure it for you right now. I'm not measuring the laminating part, I'm just measuring the cardstock. So this is 6 inches by 7.5, and I have a approximate 5/8 inch tab on the top here. Now, this is perfect for the cards, but I think I want to change this a little bit for my dies, and the reason being is, okay, so first of all, I do store my dies with the magnets in these pouches. These are Avery L pouches, and let me see how big these are. This is a 5.5 by 7.5 inch. Now, this is 7.5 inches tall, so when I put the divider in front of it, it fits perfectly. But the problem is some of my dies are too big for the pockets, like this one, for example. So I'm going to put that behind, and you can see it is sticking out over the top. Now, I know I'm going to have some die sets that are even bigger than this one, and I'm not going to be able to cover them all up, or it just won't work out well for my system. But I do think that I'm going to take this up probably another 1/2 inch. So if this is 7.5, I'm going to create a divider that is 8 inches tall with the 5/8 inch height of the tab there. And so that's going to come probably to about here. So a little bit will stick out, but not much. But for the most part, the dies in the pouches are going to be perfect behind there, okay? So now I'm going to show you how I determined what size to make this. So I'm going to take an empty bin. So I'm going to put this bin aside. Bring in an empty bin. Okay, so here's an empty one. And I'm very sorry for the lighting and all that. I got a new light because I knocked my light off the counter again. And even though my husband fixed it, it is now broken, and so I had to get a new one altogether. So let me actually squish the camera down a little bit. Give me a second. Okay, so I think you can pretty well see the size of the bin here. And you'll notice that my bin is wider at the top than the bottom, so I need to make sure that my tab is going to fit at the narrowest point. Okay, now you can see this tab fits perfectly in there, and I'm going to show you how I figured that out. So I took my ruler and I measured across the narrowest portion, and it looks to be about 6 1/4. Now, of course, we do want a little bit of play on the side, so I measured my width to be 6 inches. And like I said, I'm going to make this 8 inches because this is 7.5, and I do have some dies that are going to stick up above, so I'm going to adjust this and make this 8 inches. So my tabs and my dividers are going to be 6 inches across, 8 inches high, and a 5/8 inch tab up here. And how I determined this was basically how wide my little white tabs are there. And those stickers I'm actually going to do on a separate little label making machine to do that. So we have our measurements. We need a 6 by 8 and a 5/8 inch tab. and I will have 3 tabs going across. And if this is 6 inches, each one of these tabs needs to be 2 inches wide. So if I measure this one that's here right now, it is 2 inches wide, okay? So that's how I figured out what size I want my tabs to be. So I'm going to put all of that aside. And I'm going to switch my camera over to my desktop, and we're going to get into Cricut Design Space, and I'm going to show you what I did to create my tabs, okay? So give me just a minute to switch over, and I'll be right back. Okay, Crafty Peeps, I am back, and you can see that I'm in Cricut Design Space on a blank canvas, which is where we're going to create our dividers and the cut lines for the laminating sheets that are going to go on top of our dividers. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that I am not a videographer. I'm doing the best I can with the equipment I have, which I am simply using a cell phone, a ring light, and my laptop computer. And if anything that I do is hard to see, or I don't explain something properly, be sure to leave me a note in the comments down below, and I'll get back to you and let you know what the explanation is, or maybe even send you a picture of something that you might not have been able to see. Okay, so first thing we need to do is grab up a couple of shapes so we can get started. So I'm going to come over here to this ruler, and I'm going to click Shapes, and I want a rounded corner square. I'm going to click that, and a rounded corner rectangle. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to close that window. I'm going to use click and drag to highlight both of these images and just move them out of the way. And while they're still highlighted, I'm going to change the color to purple because the black is too hard for me to see and manipulate. Okay, so much better, right? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is use our square to create a rectangle that is 6 by 8, which were the measurements we determined earlier in this tutorial. Now, before I get into that, I do want to mention something about proportions. So currently, this is a square. It's a 2 by 2 square, and I'm going to point out that there's a little lock up here, and when I rest my mouse on it, it says Lock Proportions. So no matter how big or small I make this, it's always going to be proportionate, okay? But because I want to turn a square into a rectangle, first I'm going to undo that to go back to the 2-inch. I'm going to need to unlock the proportions, and that will allow me to manipulate all of the sides, okay? So we're going to start out by changing the width from 2 inches to 6, and we're going to change the height from 2 inches to 8. I'm going to hit Enter, and I'm going to lock that proportion so this stays a rectangle. I'm just going to scroll up so you can see I have a long rectangle. Now this next thing I'm going to do is not required, but it makes it easier for me to line things up. So I'm going to grab this rectangle, I'm going to pull it all the way to the left where it can't go any farther, and then I'm going to line the top of the image up with this black line right here. Now it doesn't matter if you line it up this way or not, it just makes it easier for me. And for your own convenience, I would recommend doing the same. Now I just so happen to use the 2-inch mark, it doesn't matter. Okay, so the basic part of our divider is set here, and now we're going to work on the tab. Now the tab is going to be a rectangle. It needs to be 2 inches wide and at least 5/8 inches high. And because this is already a rectangle, we do not need to unlock the proportions, so I'm going to leave that locked the way it is. I'm going to click on here to select it and change this to 2. And I'm just going to hit Enter. And you can see that it changed the size. It's 2 inches by 1.33. Now I know this is longer than 5/8, but that's okay because some of it is going to disappear in just a minute. So what I'm going to do now is take the tab, and I'm going to pull it all the way to the left just because it's easy to line it up. And there are other ways of lining these things up, by the way, but for ease of this video, I'm just going to do it this way. Now I know this needs to be 5/8 inches above this line, and since each one of these squares is an eighth, I'm going to come down 3/8. So I'm just going to eyeball that, and then I'm going to zoom in so that you can see 1, 2, 3. So we're at that 3/8 mark there, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're at the 5/8 mark. Okay, now I do notice that this is not lined up exactly, so I'm just going to click it and hit an arrow key just to bring it up a tiny bit. So now it's at that line. Okay, now I'm just going to reduce the screen again so we can see more. And I know I'm going to need 3 dividers. And 2 of the dividers are going to be the same, except one's going to be in reverse. And the 3rd divider is going to have the tab in the center. So what I'm going to do first of all is click and drag to highlight these, and I'm going to duplicate and move this copy aside. And later on, we're going to work on that one to create tab number 2. But in the meantime, we're going to go back to this one, which is number 1. Once again, I'm going to click and drag to highlight, and I'm going to come down here to combine. I'm going to hit weld, and you can see now this is all one piece. So all that excess that was hanging down here just disappeared. Okay, so this is 6 inches wide by 8 inches tall with a 5/8 by 2 inch tab. So that's divider number 1. Now divider number 3 is identical to divider number 1. So we're going to highlight that one. We're going to come over here and click duplicate. You can see we have a second image here, but this tab needs to be on this side. So I'm going to come up here to flip. I'm going to flip horizontally, and now you can see I have 1 and 3. Okay, so those 2 are done. So now we're going to click and drag this one back in, and this one's going to create our tab number 2. So this piece here needs to be in the center. And I already know the height is correct because this is a copy of what that was before I welded it. So we're going to, or click and drag to select them. We're going to come up here to align, and we're going to center horizontally. And you can see that it popped that tab right in the middle there. Now they're already selected, so I'm going to come down here and hit combine and weld, and now we have tab number 2. I'm going to select it again. This time I'm going to change the color of this one to, I'll make that one blue. And I'm going to change this one, I'm going to make that one green. And I'll just drag this over, and you can see now we have divider 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Now here's just a little bonus thing for you. Nothing that totally matters. Does not matter what color these are. The only thing that matters is when you put your cardstock on your Cricut mat, that you put down the color that you want your tabs to be. Now I do want to point out over here in the layers panel, you'll see that the number 1 slot has tab number 2 in it. See, this is number 2. I want to cut out tab number 1 first. So I want tab number 1 to be on the top because that's going to be the first one to cut. So I'm just going to click on it here in the layers panel. I'm going to come over here to arrange, and I'm going to say bring to front, and you'll see now it's front here. So we have 1, 2, and 3. And if we look here, we have 1, 2, and 3, and they're all in the right order. Okay. So now let me just move these 2 aside, and we're going to work on the offsets, which will be the cut lines for the laminating. So we're going to work on divider number 1, where I've got that selected. I'm going to come up here to offset, and currently this says 0.417. Now I don't know what size that is, but if you look at this offset here, you see this line? That is way, way too big for my tabs to fit in my bins. So I thought to myself, maybe 0.25 will work. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to hit 0.25. And I'm looking and I'm like, no, because that's giving me a half inch total extra. And I don't think this tab's going to fit inside the bin. So I'm going to make this 1/8 of an inch. Okay. Let me hit enter. Okay, see how small that is now? So I think that will work fine. And because our dividers have rounded corners, and by the way, I know I'm interchangeably using the words dividers and tabs. The whole thing is a divider, and this part is a tab. So, you know, if I use it interchangeably, please forgive me, okay? But anyway, so our dividers all have rounded corners, so I'm going to leave this option for the corners to be cut on a round instead of on a square. So just leave that highlighted like that. I'm going to click apply. And you'll see now we have our offset, and it's black. Now I don't like to work with black, so I'm going to change that to white. Okay, so now we have our first divider and our laminating cut line. I'm just going to select those and move them out of the way. And we're going to do the same thing for 2, and we're going to do the same thing for 3. So now I've selected number 2. I'm going to hit offset. It's currently set at 0.125, which is correct. We have a rounded corner. I'm going to hit apply. It comes in black. I'm going to change it to white. And that one's done. Now this one I know is partially hidden, and that's okay, but I have clicked it to select it. I'm once again going to go to Offset, 0.125, Rounded Corners, click Apply, change the color to white, and now I have all of my dividers and my laminating cut lines, okay? Now the next thing to do is to send these to the Cricut machine to cut. We're only going to cut one today, so I'm going to hide everything else that we've done. And first of all, let me save so I'm not losing anything. So let's call this dividers, okay? You can call it whatever you want to. It's now saved and I don't have to worry about losing anything. So what I'm going to do is hide all the pieces that I'm not going to cut out right now, which this one here, the offset for my tab 1, we're not going to cut right now. So if you come over here to Layers tab and you move to the right, you'll see a little eyeball. Just click it and it hides it. Click it and it hides it. And we're going to go down all of the pieces, and now you see we just have this left. Now they're still here, and I can bring them back anytime I want to, but we're just going to cut this one. So at this point in time, I believe my maker is on, and I see here it's already selected. I'm going to hit Make. And you can see we are on a mat and it looks purple. We're going to cut on mat and it says 12 by 12. Now my paper is not 12 by 12, so I'm just going to change this to 8.5 by 11. And you'll see now that's the size of the paper, okay? And there's my divider that's going to cut. So now I'm going to hit Continue, and it is currently looking for my machine. So let's give it a minute to connect. Yesterday I had a little bit of trouble using the Bluetooth, so today I use the USB, which seems to be working better. Okay, so you'll see here I have a number of bookmarked materials that I typically use. And how you do that is you go to Browse Materials, you find the material you want, you click Bookmark, and then it will set in here. And you can set 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 different materials that you use most frequently. Now I know today I am using 65-pound card stock, so I'm going to click that. And you'll see now it says light cardstock, 65 pound. And I have the option of changing the pressure. Now, 65 pound cardstock is pretty light, so I'm going to leave it at default pressure, but I'm going to click here to show you. If you're doing something that's thicker, you may want more. If you're doing something thinner, you might want less. But I'm going to click default. It's telling me to load the tools and material, and I know my material is the light cardstock, and it's telling me I need my fine point blade, which is already in my machine. And the next thing it's telling me is to load my mat and press the load unload button. Okay, so I am going to pause the video again. I'm going to change the angle of my camera and we're going to take a look at my Cricut. So hang on a second, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back, and you can see here I am using a Cricut light grip mat, and this is typically for your paper. And this mat is well used, so I've got my paper on here, and you'll see I've got a little piece of mint tape on there, and that's just because it's not real sticky here and I don't want my paper popping up, so I've got my paper on there. I'm going to load my mat into my machine between the guides, and you just push it in until it won't go anymore. You don't have to push hard. You'll see here that I have a light flashing. That's the load button, so I'm going to push that. It's going to do a little bit of scanning, and now the Cricut Go button is lit up, so I'm going to push that. I'm going to give that a minute or two. It's doing some more scanning, and then it's going to cut out my divider. Okay. And these dividers cut out really, really fast, so it'll just take a moment. Okay, it's done cutting. You can see my light is blinking for me to unload, so I'm going to push that, and it popped my mat out. And so now I'm going to move my Cricut out of the way. We are done with that for now. And you can see here on the mat, I've got my design cut out. I'm just going to flip this over, and if you just roll your mat back, your paper should come off very easily. I can cut this and save this. And here is my divider number 1. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to bring in my Q-Fun laminator and I'm going to laminate this, and then I'm going to show you how to cut it out on the Cricut. So give me just a moment. Okay, I'm back and you can see I have my Q-Fun here. It is all warmed up. You can see over here I've got it set to 3mm pouches, and the light is solid green, which means it's good to go. And I have what I thought was a pouch, but now I'm seeing it's actually 2 separate sheets. But you know what? I'm going to make this work. So I'm going to take my divider and I'm going to just lay that in there and line this one up on the top. Now what you're supposed to do is, if you have a pouch, you want to bring this in as far as you can into the pouch, and then you're going to insert your pouch this way. But because for some reason this is cut, I don't know if it came that way or what happened, I'm just going to try it like this and we're going to see how that works out, okay? So I'm going to start with the bottom, and these are pretty well lined up. I'm going to put this in to the center and just push it in until it won't go any longer, and just let that go. Okay, I'm going to pull this forward and you'll be able to see in a moment it's going to start coming out the back end. Okay, looks like it's doing a pretty good job. Okay, almost done. All right. Looks like it's doing a very good job. So there you have it. Okay, very nice. So I'm just going to leave this lay here to cool down a little bit. I'm going to turn off my machine and put it aside to cool down. Okay, Crafty Peeps, you can see that we are back in Design Space. I'll just show you very quickly. I have my divider laminated here. Okay, and I did trim some off the top here because it's going to make it easier when I put this back on the Cricut mat to do the next cut. We're back in Design Space and we are done with this one for now. So I'm just going to click on that and I'm going to come over here and hide it. And we are going to cut the offset that goes along with that tab. So actually, let me bring this back in. So you'll see it's like this, okay? So we're going to cut this outline portion. So I'm going to turn that back off and we're going to come back up here to Maker, click Make. We're going back to the mat. Okay, and notice it's white now, and that's because the color I selected for this piece here was white, so it makes it white. And we're once again cutting on the mat, and it says 12 by 12, and this time I'm not going to change that. But I am going to make an adjustment here. So this is actually the hardest part to doing these tabs. So recall that this offset is 1/8 inch larger all the way around than the actual divider. So what we need to do is set this on the mat so that it cuts out in the proper place where we put the already laminated piece on the mat. So I hope that makes sense, okay? And I will show you that in a minute. So I know that this is larger than my divider, and I just drug it down to this 2-inch mark here. Okay, so it's 2 inches down, 1 inch over. So when I put my laminated divider on the mat, it needs to be 1/8 inch inside of the 1 and 1/8 inch down from the 2. And that is the tricky part in doing this whole process. The rest of it is a piece of cake. This line-up part can be kind of tricky. So if this is a fail, I'm really, really sorry, but be rest assured that if you can get it lined up perfectly, you will be good as gold. Okay, so now I'm going to remember that I came down to the 2 and over to the 1, okay? And that's right where that corner is. The rest of this is all going to line up the same. We just need to make sure that this corner is correct. And when I put my divider onto the Cricut mat, it needs to be 1/8 inch down and 1/8 inch over. And that's the actual divider, not the laminating sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and click Continue. Once again, it's looking for my machine. Okay, and this time we're going to select I don't think I have what I want on here. Okay, so I'm going to go to Browse Materials. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go down to Plastic. Okay, so what happens is it brings up this menu with all of these different plastics on it. I'm just going to take plastic packaging. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to hit Done. And you can see now it says plastic packaging. And I'm going to make this more pressure because I don't know how much pressure is going to come off on that. It's telling me that I need my fine point blade in my Cricut, which it already is, and it's telling me to load the mat and press the load unload button. So once again, I'm going to pause the camera. I am going to flip things around so you can see my Cricut and how I'm putting the divider onto the mat. So give me just a moment. Okay, so here is my Cricut mat. And I'm actually going to be using this mat upside down because, like I said, this portion here is not as sticky as I need it to be, so I'm using it the opposite way. But like I said, we need to down 2 inches, over an inch, and we need to be 1/8 inside of there. So I'm going to flip this around, and these are metrics, but we still have the 1 inch marks here. So I'm going to take my divider. I hope all that made sense. And I need to have this 1/8 of an inch inside of that measurement. So if I line this up right at the 2 inch down and the 1 inch over, that cut line is going to be right on my image here, and it's going to be off. So I need to move this so it's down and over about 1/8 of an inch, which isn't very much, okay? All right. I think I need to come up a tiny bit. Like I said, to me, this is the hardest part of this whole entire project, is getting this part lined up properly. Okay, I'm just going to move this aside so I can lay the mat flat and get this lined up, okay? Okay, let me just give you a close-up there. So we're down 2 over 1, and you can see right there, I'm down what I'm hoping is about 1/8 of an inch down and 1/8 of an inch in, okay? And I push this down, and of course I have my little mint tape here because it's not sticky right there. I'm going to load my mat because this is already blinking, so I can load my mat. I'm going to hit that and cross our fingers and hope this cuts right. I'm just a little nervous because I've had some problems doing this in the past, but I think I got it down. So now the Cricut light is blinking. I'm going to push that. It's going to do a little bit of thinking. And you know what? If this doesn't cut perfectly, it's okay. Nobody's going to know except me. Or in your case, if you do some of these, you're probably going to know. But honestly, in the big scheme of things, as long as the sheet is basically laminated, you're good to go. And I think we're doing good. I think. All right. The proof will be in the pudding. Now, because I hit extra pressure, it's going to go around 2 times. Okay. Now, before I unload this mat, which it's telling me to unload, I'm actually going to just check the corner and make sure, yes, it did cut all the way through. Okay, so I can go ahead and unload the mat. And I'm going to turn off my Cricut, close everything up, and move it aside. So we are done with that. Okay. I'll bring my mat back in and take my tape off. I'm going to turn the mat over and just roll this off so you can see how easy that came off. Here's the piece of acetate or whatever you want to call this. I'm going to throw that away. And here is my laminated tab. Okay, now I was off a little. You see it's narrow here and wider here, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to put this inside of one of the bins and show you. So here's my bin. And it fits in there perfectly. Okay, perfect. Okay. Yes, it's off a little bit, but no one's going to know except me, okay? So that's how you create these. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is how to make a label to put on here. And if you'll remember, I said I wasn't going to put the labels on the cardstock directly, and that's because I want to be able to peel off and stick a new one on if I change my mind about categories or where I'm going to have my individual dividers. So give me just a second. I'm going to grab up my label maker and I'll be right back. So this is the little container I keep my label maker in, and this is the label maker. This is a Nimbot, and I did pick this up on Amazon a while ago. It's a Nimbot D11. It does take a couple of different sizes of labels, and I do not recall what size label's in here now, but I think it's the right one for what I need. It does have a charging cord, so you can charge it up when it needs to be charged, but I think this has enough juice in it for today. And all you do to turn it on is just hold this button down. You'll hear it make a tone, and then it turns blue. Okay, so that's part of it. The next part of it is actually creating the label, which is done on an app on your cell phone. So give me just a second, okay? So what you'll see here on the screen is I got a number of apps. I'm going to click on Nimbot, and it is loading, and it is checking to make sure that I'm connected, which I believe I am. Okay, so we're going to click New, and then if I click here, you'll see it's asking me if I want to edit, so I'm going to click Edit, and this is where I'm going to type in what I want my label to say. So my first label on this batch here is food and drink. Okay, now I can adjust this to make it bigger or smaller, and I think I will make it a little bit bigger. And let me think, do I want a different font? If I want another font, I can click here and choose another font. Click this one for now, okay? And if I want to make it bigger still, I can do this. There's a variety of things you can do. You can space the words out farther, you can center, you can do a variety of things. So I'm just going to click off, and you'll see here that it looks like it's pretty well centered on my label, okay? Now I'm going to click Print. You'll see it there, and I'm going to click Print here, and it is going to print out on my label printer. Okay, so the label printed. I'm going to turn that off and close out of this program. Okay, I don't need to save that, so I'm just going to close it out. All right. Okay, so I used my little label printer, which is this little machine here called the Nimbot D11. I created this label that says food and drink, and so I'm just going to peel this off and stick it on the top portion of the tab. Okay, so there you go. There is my first tab, and I don't really care for this color, but I may go ahead and use it anyway because I did make this label. But that's how you create these dividers, laminated, and the labels to go on them to separate your dies into categories or whatever other kind of things you want to do. Like I made some of these to go with my card stash. So let me put this inside of the bin. So give me a second to bring the bin in. This is the one I showed you earlier. It says food and drink on here, and here is the birthday card label here. I'm going to take that out, take this out. I'm going to tuck this into the front here, and you can see how nice that looks. Okay? Very, very nice. So I know that was a lot, and I'm sorry for having to switch back and forth between recording modes, but that's what I have to do with the equipment that I have. And if anybody has any suggestions on how to do it easier, I am totally open to that. I would appreciate any help I can get. But I think that was super easy to do. And like I said, to me, the hardest part is getting the laminated divider lined up properly on your Cricut mat for it to cut out the right way. So like, for example, you'll see here I have a wider margin on this side than this side, but as long as there's some going all the way around, you're good to go. So that's it. That's what I've got for you today, Crafty Peeps. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Like I said, I know it was a lot, and it's a long tutorial. If you have any questions, need me to explain anything, or you couldn't see the video well enough, just drop me a comment down below and let me know. And as soon as I get all of my dividers created, and I have a lot of categories to do, I am going to get them all set in my bins, and then I'm going to film my die storage and give you guys a look at it. And then I will put my dies to bed and move on to something else. So, yep, that's what I've got for you. I really appreciate you hanging around with me today, and I will catch you all in the next crafty video. See you later, crafty peeps. Bye.